it was very funny because we started our first session, and immediately, as Allan does, he picked up on something that just came up in my first words. It was not where I wanted to go, but it just picked on something that I said as we started, and we started from there. And at the middle of the session, the anxiety that was there vanished. And by the end of the session, the anxiety was still not there. By the end of the day, the anxiety was still not there. The next day, the anxiety was still not there. The next week, the anxiety was still not there. I cannot, now I'm more in a normal life. Sometimes there is a bit of anxiety that manifests and then goes away, and as we always experience whatever. But for, I would say, minimum a month, I had no experience of anxiety whatsoever. And that really struck me, because we started to talk. He started to do whatever he does. And somehow this interaction just produced something extraordinary. What can I say?
Allan is an incredible healer. Every time I come out of a session with him, a part of me would get healed and nurtured at the deepest level that I can imagine.
So this is what I call the embodiment process. The first thing I want to describe what is, most of this is my own intuitive insight, a little bit I've learned from outside sources. So let's start by talking about the fetus, the prenatal condition, the gestation period when the fetus is still in the mother's womb. There's a certain way in which the fetal heartbeat is templating off the mother. The mother's heart and bodily function plays a role in helping the fetus develop a stable heart rhythm. And the rate of the heartbeat of the fetus is correlated with the length of time in conception. So the rate seems to increase over a period of time, then it goes back, lowers again. This can be researched online. But my inner research shows that the mother's emotional condition influences the ability of the fetus to stabilize and maintain a stable heartbeat and rhythm, so that the child starts to learn, even in the fetal stage, how to manage and keep the heartbeat coming back to a stable rhythm, which is quite important in self-regulation. Now I want to fast forward to when after the child is born and begins the early life development, the first few years. I believe it's important up till about age 7, maybe to some extent beyond that, but particularly the first 7 years. The child's nervous system is not developed sufficiently for the child to be able to self-regulate. So that when a child becomes dysregulated, there will be a tendency of the child to go to the mother in the dysregulated state, because the child doesn't know how to self-regulate, simply doesn't have a sufficient development in the nervous system to do that. So the child goes to the mother crying or upset about something, and then the contact and the close connection with the mother causes the child's system to template off of the mother and come back to regulation, which has to do with I think it's called down regulating the sympathetic nervous system. So you have the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system should be the operational mode of the child's system most of the time. And then there need to be states in which the child experiences dysregulation. Let's say a 2-year-old child, 3-year-old, 4-year-old child riding their bicycle. They fall off and scratch their knee or elbow. Then their system becomes dysregulated. And maybe they're crying, they run to mama. Mama holds the child, maybe kisses them or whatever. And the child's system re-regulates off the mother's system. Now, this is the ideal situation where the mother is sufficiently regulated. Her system can inform the child's system how to restabilize the regulation. And when that condition is not reinforced in the child, when the child becomes dysregulated and the mother's not there, the father's not there, there's no grandmother, no grandparent, the child doesn't have someone who's in a regulated state that they can restore their regulation, that entails what we could call an early childhood trauma. And the dysregulated state will have certain emotional components. But what happens over time is not only is there one emotion, but there can be a number of emotions. Let's say the original emotion is fear. The child, maybe a dog runs in the yard, frightens the dog. The child becomes dysregulated, runs to the mother. Mother's not there, father's not there, nobody's there. So the child's system then, the subconscious mind starts to associate fear with dysregulation. And it creates in NLP, it's called an anchor. So fear then becomes an anchor for dysregulation. Now, let's say later something happens and the child experiences anger and becomes dysregulated. Now the emotion of anger and fear are both associated with the state of dysregulation. And there could be 3, 4, I don't know how many emotions, I don't know if there is a limit, but different emotions can then become anchors for the state of dysregulation. So anchors are kind of like reminders. It's the equivalent of what, I think it's the equivalent of what is called Pavlovian response. When Dr. Pavlov would ring a bell and feed the dog, and the dog began to salivate just from hearing the bell. So that anchor then can be repeated throughout a person's life. 40, 50 years later, that emotion comes and it reminds the system of the state of dysregulation and the danger and threat and trauma of that. So the whole thing gets reloaded. So it's kind of like you invite someone to a party. You don't know them that well, and you're having a quiet little party at home for some close friends, and you invite this new friend. They show up with 10 of their friends who are drunk and very rowdy. It's disruptive to the whole party. So the rowdy friends represent all the other emotions that get associated with the dysregulated state. That's why it can take some processing to be able to restore the ability to self-regulate to the person. And that's the purpose of this process that I'm going to introduce and guide people through. I'm not saying it's the best process out there. It's the one that I've developed and used frequently over the years. So one thing important to notice here is simply working with an emotion may not really integrate all the energy. I think what's necessary is that the dysregulated state be presented with a stability of consciousness so that we begin to reparent our child, ourself, or another. And the parent here becomes the state of consciousness, the quietude of consciousness, so that the person who's holding the space is simply being present. And being present means there's not some moralistic evaluation. There's no judgment of right, wrong, good or bad, better than, worse than. It's not a It's not a place of judgment. It's not a place of morality. It's simply a place of being present. So in the early stages of this kind of reparenting, it may require another person to be present. One of the reasons another person is so important is because initially this condition of dysregulation became developed in the system or became chronic in the system because of the absence or the relationship to another who was not there at the time. So it's in relationship with another, namely the parents or elders or caregivers, who play a part in the anchoring a dysregulated state to an emotion. So when we have another present, that can be quite beneficial to the initial starting to reinitiate or retrain the system to self-regulate, so that after some time, in some cases, even initially, the person themselves can have enough recognition, a sufficient level of recognition of consciousness, that they can bring the consciousness to that part of themselves that's dysregulated in order to reparent themselves. I think it's necessary, at least I would say for most people, initially to have someone else hold the space. And sometimes we have groups where people can hold the space for each other. And then that is training the system, the person, to be able to bring their own sense of presence, their own sense of pure consciousness to the dysregulated state in order to self-regulate, in order to return to regulation. So in a way, the consciousness then becomes the true parent. Because if you think of the structure of the mind, consciousness is the parent of the mind. You could even say consciousness is the grandparent to the mind. But I'm not going to go into the details of that right now. I want to go to the process itself. And I'd like, if someone's willing to volunteer or work with one individual.
Hello.
Okay. Now let's see. So is there some, let's say, recent enough event in which you felt dysregulated?
Oh, yeah, there's like a menu. I think the main one I could point to that's pretty present right now is I'm in a great deal of dental pain. Half of my face is throbbing, and I'm holding that pain and luxuriating in the container, and just kind of hanging tight with both. So that's what's present for me right now. Does that work? You need to be more emotional, or what?
Yeah. Do you have a lot of emotion about the dental pain? Not an overwhelming emotion necessarily, but a significant emotion.
No, I'm just exploring it. It's kind of exquisite in terms of feeling the outlines and the limits of the pain. But that's another maybe journey. I was just listening to your description and kind of maybe floating back, or at least imagining a baby. And all of a sudden, I don't know why I'm trying to remember, but it was like a kite launched and there was several things attached to the kite, and it raised up into the atmosphere, and I was just waking up to how high it was, and it was pretty scary how high it was. So I don't know if that helps, but I kind of relate that to
so
I was imagining deep down regulated times as a baby. So
yeah, can you presence the fear or terror?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Yeah, for sure.
So what I'd like you to do is just bring that present. Just bring it.
It's there.
Bring it. Now, a couple of things here. First thing is, when this originally occurred, it was accompanied by the absence of someone who could help you regulate.
Yeah.
So it was accompanied by separation. And it took you deeper into a feeling of being separate, separate individual in a world of separate individuals. So what I'd like you to do now is notice somebody's here with you. I'm here with you. Be aware that I am incapable of seeing this as a issue. I see you as a divine being. That's all I'm capable of doing, is seeing you as a divine being. And that you've gotten into this situation. Notice also that you're safe right now. Just take into account, this is a safe space. You're physically safe. There's no danger. So I'm here with you.
That means a lot.
Yeah. So now we're rewiring your system so that you feel connected and you feel someone with you. There's a presence here. So based on that, see if you can allow this fear or terror to come a little closer. Just let it come a little, welcome it a little closer, not going into some sort of big acting it out or something like that. Just
yeah, no, I can. I'm there on the edge. I'm edging it.
Yeah. Okay. So is there any other emotion which is, let's say, there with it?
Well, it's a little bit of an exercise to let my guard down to allow you in, and to allow all that in. So I'm processing that. As far as other emotions, I'm having to be with it and seeing that it's not really terror, but something that I've assigned, that kind of meaning to.
Yeah. What emotion are you feeling right now? Predominant emotion.
Confusion, which is my natural state that I like being in, because I'm letting go of judgment. So yeah, I'm staying open and confused.
Okay. There any other? You're noticing any other emotion?
Well, there's a childlike wonderment or awe, just just exploring the whole process, examining, being with the whole process and allowing it to occur, so that, I'm not dying because of it. So that's kind of a wonderment.
Yeah. Just to explain the process we did so far, we helped you recognize the presence of another who is stable and loves you and cares for you. We help you recognize that you're in a safe space. And we help you clarify the emotion. So by naming it and exploring that name, see if it fits or not, then you have more clarity about what you're actually feeling, what emotion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now the next step is let's put the emotion aside now. Just kind of say, okay, we're going to set that aside. And feel into your body. Where in your body do you feel a sensation related to this?
It's in the belly, in the stomach. There's a real gut kind of anchoring that's kind of there. I don't know, maybe even a resistance that's there.
The resistance is a mental or emotional interpretation.
All right.
We're looking for the physical sensation.
Oh, I feel it. I was trying to describe it, but it's here in the Buddha belly. So
yeah. Okay. Let's see if you can describe it physically. Does it feel hot, cold, tense, trembling? Something that's more physical.
There's how would I describe that? there's a jumpiness to it, like after being frightened, there's that kind of jumpiness, instability to it. If that's a way of describing an emotion.
Well, that word stands out for me. Instability.
Okay. Yeah.
Physical instability.
Yeah.
You just keep your attention on that. Pay attention to it with curiosity and interest.
Yeah.
With compassion, like you were holding a small child. Not trying to make it go away, not trying to change it.
I'm just smiling at it. So.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, just welcome it and be with it. Curious, compassionate. As a side note, if the emotion comes back, spend some time with the emotion and then return to the physical sensation.
Well, as I'm sorry.
The only don't here is don't go into the interpretive story about it.
Gotcha. No, I'm not going to bother with that. It's just, it's fun to see that it's expanding a bit. There's a little space. It's almost like rather than one sharp point or sword, there's like, the fronds of this plant now are spreading out and there's gaps, but there's still sharp points all around. Okay. But there's gaps between the sharp points that are through the expansion.
Excellent. Excellent. So the physical sensation is shifted a little bit.
Huh.
Yeah, is that true?
Yes.
Okay, stay with it a little more. Just paying attention to the physical sensation.
Well, I just surrendered it's just turned into ecstasy now. So.
Okay, that's a little bit.
It's flowing.
For most people, that's a little premature.
Sorry. It's what it is.
No, it's beautiful. It's no problem. But for most cases, what we do at this point is we ask that sensation. We allow it to have its own sort of personality. Ask it what it would like to reveal to you, what it would like to show you, what information it has for you, what is it trying to do for you. And then when you ask, just wait, not trying to think about it. Wait with your imagination. Just open your imagination. And remember, when this first happened, you didn't have a left brain, linear thinking, logical mind. You had a child's imagination.
Yeah.
So allow your imagination free reign and see what comes in response to the questions. Something may come, nothing may come tonight, tomorrow, next week. You're not trying to force it. You're just being available so that whatever is held there, it can move, it can shift, it can develop on its own. You're giving it permission and space.
Well, it has definitely expanded. It flowed. I guess the sensing or the messaging to the Freddie inside me that went through all of this is that it feels like it's a return to peace, that it processed and it's peaceful now, and that everything's safe and okay.
Okay, good. Now come back to the original emotion, Tara, and see if you presence it now, what happens?
It's less. I mean, there's a target-rich environment there, but of energy, but there's almost like a happiness there that it's not threatening. It's something there to further explore.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
So that's you can unpin this now, Davey. And we go back to the gallery view. So that's the embodiment process. So all I'm doing, I'm just staying in presence, and I've done this with many people many times. So I kind of have it's not difficult. I'm not trying to force anything. But keep in mind that the original emotion most likely has developed other emotions that are attached. When I'm working individually with people, I use a process called root clearing. So I create a timeline using dowsing and intuition, create a timeline and figure out what are these other attached emotions, and then you clear the whole thing in one go. It's kind of like you have a birthday party and you invite some friends, and one of your friends, you just invite him. And when he comes to the party, he shows up with 10 of his buddies, and they're all drunk and crazy, and it sort of spoils the party. So that's the kind of context of anchoring. So these emotions are held together and support that dysregulated state and the shock and trauma of it. So this is just a little process that can help you work with that. And I think that's it.